All right, welcome everybody. So today we have two presentations and a sort of joint session. First up is Ariana French talking about accessibility and crowdsourcing lessons from Project Describe. Ariana French is the Director of Digital Technology at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. She leads delivery of digital products and helps create compelling tech strategies for AMNH. Prior to AMNH, she managed digital projects and collections management systems for the Yale University Art Gallery. Without further ado, Ariana.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for being here. So, Project Describe. I'll work sort of going from our institutional goal through our technical delivery and what we did, and then I'll talk about next steps. So, our institutional goal was how do we bring our main website at amnh.org into compliance with WCAG 2.0 level AA standards. The process to determine that this was the threshold for acceptance for accessibility was a process that took many months with many stakeholders, and we consulted with some outside partners as well. And we believe that with the type of assets that we had, from images to video to documents and everything else that we served up on our website, this would provide the best match in terms of meeting the needs of our visitors who might be using screen readers or other assistive technologies. So our website sees nearly 10 million online visitors every year, and we have over 15,000 images without an alternative text description, which you may have also heard described as an alt tag. We used a sort of two-phased approach to reach this compliance with WCAG 2.0 standards. We divided it into two steps, more or less. First, remediate the code, take a peek under the hood, structure the content on our websites in such a way that it was logical and followed the standards and guidelines. And then two, remediate the content. So any content like images lacking alt tags or videos lacking transcriptions, so on and so forth, that constituted the second phase of work and over 80% of the lift in this project. So if in case you're not familiar with what an alternative text description is, it's an HTML attribute that is defined in the alt attribute. So for example, this is an image of two brown bears standing next to a stream in the Alaska brown bear diorama. So Project Describe comes in the content remediation piece where we needed to bring these alt tags to over 15,000 images on our website. So we are very thinly staffed for this kind of thing, and we thought that maybe turning this into a crowdsourced effort might bring us closer to the eventual goal of compliance. So this wasn't meant to, in other words, Project Describe was not meant to sort of fix everything from videos, to transcriptions or anything like that. We just carved out that one piece of work in the remediation that involved our 15,000 images and brought those to the public in a platform that allowed them to describe those images and submit those descriptions back through the Project Describe platform. By any chance, are there any people here from New York Public Library? Okay. Well, Project Describe was actually adapted from an open source platform called Scribe, which was developed by the New York Public Library. I see some nodding heads, so maybe some of you have used some of their amazing sites that employ this technology. It's a really terrific open source platform, and it was originally developed to allow the public to transcribe images of text into the actual text itself. Identify where on the screen these pieces of information lived, and then the crowd could also vote on which submitted description they felt best matched the original content. So we thought Scribe was a really good candidate for getting us closer to our goal for Project Describe, but we needed to do a little bit of tweaking. So you see, I don't know if you can see at the top here, there are three links. It says sort, describe, and review. and then an about link that generally describes the project. We actually customized a bit of these links so that we weren't really interested in transcription because that wasn't part of our scope, but we were more interested in how do we simply cut this down to 2 steps, serve up the image, allow people to describe it, submit it. Done. That's step 1, describe. Step 2, which I'll get into in a little bit, is review. So that allows people to see the submitted descriptions that have already come through the platform and then vote on the one that they feel is most appropriate based on a set of guidelines. The other customization that we did was add a login. So this was a stakeholder requirement. The Scribe platform does not have this requirement, but we added it. So anyone wishing to participate had to log in using either a Google account or a Facebook account. So here you see the first step. This is the describe step, and this is where you're simply given a prompt and an image. And if you're familiar at all with the WCAG 2.0 guidelines, you know that context is key. So describing an image isn't sufficient. You really have to sort of understand the context in which the image is presented. So another customization that we added to this project was a link that allowed you to see the original page in which the image was embedded on our website. And then hopefully you took the time to see that context, come back to our site, and then enter a description that also honored the context in which it was presented. So along the way, you're also given an option to view a tutorial, see other examples of how you should submit a description according to the accessibility guidelines. And our hope was that as people move through this platform, they would take the time to sort of see the best practices and the context in which the images were presented. So here we're looking at the review step. This is an example, and I'm sorry, the text is very tiny, but there are actually 3 different examples of submitted descriptions here. And to vote on the one you feel is most appropriate, you simply click on it and submit, and then you're served up another image and the same set of 2 or 3 descriptions and click submit. So once the system sees a threshold of a certain number of submitted votes for a particular description, it decides, okay, this candidate can be, or this image can be removed from the pool, it can go into internal review, and I'm going to serve up the additional descriptions that need more voting in the pool. So for the internal review process, we're looking here at a custom tool that was developed by our technical lead, Alex Gorski, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. This is a tool that takes the thumbnail of the image, the crowd descriptions that were submitted, and the editor has an option, or the approver has an option, to either accept what was submitted or they can edit in line and click submit. So AMNH, as you probably know, is a scientific institution, so a number of our images are really out there. So we have some microscopy images that pop up on the site. We have some very diverse images ranging from families visiting the museum down to diagrams of DNA. So it's not only important that the crowd visiting our site and submitting these descriptions understand the original context. It's also key that our internal reviewers get the chance to take a look at what's coming through, and they can add their own vote in terms of the accuracy of the description. This is a Google Data Studio slide that we use to essentially keep tabs on the activity happening on Project Describe. So moving across the top, we're noting sessions, average time on page, which if you work in analytics, this is actually pretty high. So we see a lot of engagement with our content on this site. There are over, I think at this point, 1,100 registered users on the site using either Google or Facebook. And we have people coming in from all over the world. Of course, 80%, over 80% are coming from the US, but we also have a pretty significant contingent coming in from the UK and Canada, which surprised us a little bit. This little line chart at the bottom represents the activity over time. So the huge spikes that you see are direct results of email campaigns that have gone out, and also Twitter campaigns that are publicizing the website. We found that the activity on the site dies down to almost nothing if we're not constantly pushing and promoting this site online. So a couple lessons learned. We found that adapting the Scribe platform actually worked really well. It got us to the goal of accessibility and alt tag descriptions for these images a lot faster, I think, than if we had tried to roll our own solution. And we also learned that, we positioned this originally as a pilot. So in other words, we put it out there, we adapted the code, but we tried to keep the expectations low because we really, truly had never done this before. We've done crowdsourcing projects before, but never for something like this. So we kind of positioned this internally as a pilot. So it worked great for launch, but once it was launched, we never quite made that shift into, okay, let's make this a production thing. Let's roll this into our ongoing workflows and processes, and let's also assign resources. So along those lines, resources is key. So once we had this up and running, we realized we need to review this and keep this going. So we have a backlog of several thousand images that have submitted descriptions waiting for approval, but we don't have someone who is assigned 100% to actually do those reviews and make those approvals. We're working on it. But this was definitely a learning in the process. And we also, I think, learned that, we are a scientific institution, and therefore any content that we put out to the public to crowdsource assistance with or crowdsource content contributions needs to meet a standard of rigor. So obviously we knew this, I think, intellectually, but from a workflow and keeping the project alive standpoint, it was definitely a learning that we are still adjusting our internal processes to meet and sustain the project going forward. And that's all I have. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Yes?
Do you know anything about the people who are taking part in the description process?
Because we use Google and Facebook for registration, we know their first name, last name, and email. And I think Facebook also provides their Facebook profile link. So whatever they have, this is just the standard sort of information you get when you use social login. So we know that much, and we can email them if they want to opt into any communications from us. Yes?
I wondered if you had made any special effort to market to the people with the assisted means, or ask them to participate, or you have a sense of who did participate?
That's a great question. In our initial research for the overall project of bringing our website into compliance, we did a great deal of research with that community and with advocates for that community to arrive at what's acceptable in terms of digitally trying to meet this goal. And so this was an outcome of that process, but Project Describe itself has not been specifically marketed to that community since it was launched. Yes, one more. Oh, sorry.
The outreach plans that you had in terms of social, reaching people and getting people to sign up, feedback, posting on social. What was the cadence? How did you get your marketing support to support that endeavor? How frequently did you reach out?
Looking back, I think there was a huge, on the calendar of social, pushes. There were a number of sort of initial efforts that were scheduled, but we have this calendar of tons of stuff, as you might imagine, that we want to promote through social. And I think over time, it just kind of lost a little visibility, but hopefully we can revisit this as sort of an ongoing social content push. So I think that's
Thank you very
all.
much.
Thank you so much.